All right, welcome back to Niners Nightly. With us is Dave Softy Mahler, the voice of the Pacific Northwest. Probably the biggest star in Seattle today is Dave Softy Mahler, KJR, a boomer up in the Pacific Northwest. And on Niners Nightly, we thought let's take a peek behind enemy lines with a couple of the teams in the next few days, and we decided we'd start with Seattle. And Dave is with us on the UMA guest line to talk all things Hawks. Dave, good to see you, man. How are you?
Yeah, it's exciting to be on the UMA guest line. I wake up every day hoping to be a guest on the UMA guest line, and every day I am a guest on the UMA guest line is a very, very good day. So I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the kind words about the superstardom up here in Seattle. The bar is very low, by the way, Larry, in Seattle, so that's not saying much, but looking good. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Great to see you. Great to hear you. And, there's so many different things I want to get your thoughts on. Let's talk about it's been kind of a wild off season for the Niners as far as what they haven't done and kind of the tear down and the rebuild, which we kind of expected, but maybe not to this degree. So we'll have to a lot of unhappy Niner fans. But you guys have gone through your own upheaval up there. Mike Macdonald, I think, is a really good coach. He got rid of Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator. They didn't run the ball enough. They didn't have a good enough line. They threw the ball too much. They bring in Clint Kubiak, who's probably going to run the same system that the Niners run. And then you guys, really juggled the wide receivers. Out is DK Metcalf. Out is Tyler Lockett. In is Cooper Kupp, who's from Yakima, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So what do you think of the wide receiver upheaval? What kind of reaction has your audience given you?
People are excited. I think we were stuck in a little bit of mediocrity up here in Seattle, and there's nothing worse in the NFL than being stuck in 8-9, 9-8 purgatory, and that's what the Seahawks have been all about for seemingly the last maybe 5 or 6, 7 seasons. Look, they haven't won a playoff game at home since 2016, which is just nuts when you think about the last time they beat a team at home in the playoffs was when they took on the Lions and Thomas Rawls went bananas at running back for them. That was almost a decade ago. So that's got to change, man. It's got to change now because John Schneider, look, his status on Mount Rushmore of executives in this town is rock solid. We've only got a couple of them that have won a championship in the 4 major sports anyway. So you think about Todd Lywicki and Lenny Wilkins and, people like that. Schneider's on the list, but that was 11 years ago, right? That they won the championship in 2013, 12 years ago, man. So he's got to prove he can do it again. Going to be very, very hard to do that. Not a lot of general managers, presidents of football operations can turn things around with this big of a gap of mediocrity in between. Like I look at what Tom Landry did with the Cowboys back in the day and the gap between Super Bowls, the gap between Super Bowls for Brady and Belichick, but that was Brady and Belichick for God's sake. So, John is really, I think, kind of struggling to kind of recapture the magic they had with that first time with Pete in the LOB back in the early 2000s, but they're trying to be great again. And I give him credit for that, Larry. There's a lot of teams in the NFL that would not jump off the DK Metcalf wagon. They would not have the guts to go away from Geno Smith, who by all accounts is likely probably a top half of the NFL quarterback right now. Not elite, but not terrible. Probably top half. They're okay at quarterback with Geno Smith, but they want to be more than okay. And if you look at the Sam Darnold contract, man, they have written that thing up very team friendly. They can get the hell out of there after a year if things don't go well. So you just think about the job that John Schneider's done in the last couple weeks. He swapped out DK Metcalf for a second. He swapped out Geno Smith for a third. He signed Sam Darnold to a very team-friendly contract. And, oh, by the way, picked up $25 million in salary cap space to go after an offensive line. So that's the next step now for John, is fixing this offensive line, which for a decade plus has been a major problem up here in Seattle.
Yeah, what is the issue there? I saw they added Josh Jones in free agency. PFF had him as the second worst offensive line in the NFL last year. But they've tried. I mean, they've drafted 7 offensive linemen in the last 3 drafts alone.
Right.
I kind of thought Damian Lewis was a pretty good player, but they let him out. Cross, I thought, was a pretty good player. He's the starting left tackle. He's young. Abraham Lucas, I know, has had some injuries, Dave, but he's pretty solid. I thought Bradford was decent at LSU. Where is the weakness in this line? Watimi, for crying out loud, won the Outland Trophy.
Right.
So, I mean, is this what is the issue with the offensive line? Are they picking the wrong guys? Why did they let Lewis out of there? Was he disappointing in your guys' eyes?
Yeah, they just wanted to upgrade, right? With Laken Tomlinson, and that didn't happen. And now he's moved on after a year. I mean, look, they keep doing this with these old guys, these reclamation projects, and they bring in, guys like DJ Fluker. They bring in Luke Jokel. They bring in Laken Tomlinson, players like that. And now on the defensive side, they've done it again with, DeMarcus Lawrence, by the way, which we can talk about him in just a second. I think the Hawks have had every member of the first round of the 2013 draft, by the way, come through the VMAC at some point in time in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. So the problem with the offensive line has been pretty simple. They're drafting plenty of offensive linemen. As you said, this is not a problem of not, spending draft capital on linemen. They draft linemen. They just all stick. And they can't develop them. They can't coach them up. And they keep changing offensive coordinators. They keep changing offensive line coaches. I think now they've had 5 different offensive line coaches in the last 7 years, and now 4 different coordinators in the last 5 years, going back to Brian Schottenheimer and Shane Waldron and Ryan Grubb and now Clint Kubiak. And the questions are always the same. When is this guy going to fix the offensive line? Who's going to be the genius that comes in here and fixes the offensive line? And nobody can do it, right? And the one constant has been John Schneider. So whatever money the Seahawks have left over in free agency, and now they have 10 draft picks coming up in the draft, they've got to be able to fix the offensive line. Larry, I think there's a chance they might have 3 new starters on the offensive line at left guard, right guard, and center by September. You mentioned Big Olu, the Allen Trophy winner at Michigan. Hey, that's great, but that was at Michigan, man. There's a reason why the guy fell to the 6th round. There's a reason why the Hawks went out and got Connor Williams in free agency coming off the knee injury, and then he ends up retiring halfway through the year because they were desperate at center, and now Tomlinson's gone. They got to have a new left guard. They were starting a rookie at the end of the year from Utah, Satoa Lamea at right guard. He was okay, but not great. And you're right about Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, the 2 tackles. They're fine, right? Charles Cross is probably a top half of the league left tackle. Abe Lucas is pretty good, but he's been banged up. He just can't stay healthy. So they absolutely, without question, need to address the interior of the offensive line. If they don't do that, the Darnold signing, the Cooper Kupp signing, none of it's going to matter. Kenny Walker being on the roster, even if he's healthy, none of it's going to matter if they don't fix that damn offensive line. And frankly, I'm getting tired of talking about it. I'm getting tired of guys like you asking me about it. It's been going on for too freaking long.
I saw an interview that you did on camera with Clint Kubiak. You and your partner interviewed Kubiak a couple weeks ago. That was before the Darnold edition. Right. So did you get any indication in that interview of what was coming? And what do you think? I mean, how do you think the offense looks different this year with Clint and Darnold as opposed to what they had last year with Grubb and obviously Geno?
Well, I mean, the biggest difference we hope and we think is going to be just a bigger commitment to run the ball, right? But we'll see. I mean, we'll see what kind of offensive line they have. We'll see what kind of receivers they've got when it's all said and done. I mean, right now they got a couple of possession guys at the top of the food chain and Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba. They can get downfield, and there's a chance, Larry, that you might see JSN play on the outside a little bit more because he took a lot of snaps in the slot a year ago. I think he was number 1 or number 2 in slot snaps last season. Cooper Kupp was up there as well, but Cooper Kupp at 32 years old, is he really going to be your X receiver at his age? Probably not. So you're likely going to see JSN play more on the outside. So what does that do to him? The guy had a career year last season in the slot. And now we're talking about potentially messing with it and kicking him outside because of the arrival of Cooper Kupp. I mean, they brought in Michael Gallup for a visit the other day, the former Cowboy, who actually had retired, by the way, and spent last year doing nothing. They brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who's okay as a number 3 guy, but I think they can do better. You think about their room a year ago, man, it was JSN, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett. Now they're talking about, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp at a advanced age, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So I think they're going to draft somebody. I don't think taking a receiver at number 18 is off the table anymore, especially after DK Metcalf took off for Pittsburgh. But that's a concern, man. The health of Cooper Kupp. The guy has missed, Larry, a full season of football in the last 3 years. When he's playing, he's fine. But the problem with him, he's like Abe Lucas. He's banged up a lot. He's like Rashad Penny when he was here in Seattle, and maybe even Kenny Walker now. The Hawks just have 3 or 4 guys every single year, it seems like, that just can't shake the injury bug, and they just went out and signed a guy who's had an injury problem for the last 3 years. So we'll see if he can stay healthy. They're giving him $15 million a year. Him getting banged up would be a pretty damn big blow to this offense, man. No doubt.
Let's flip the card and talk about Macdonald's strength, right? His strength is on the defensive side of the ball, and they signed DeMarcus Lawrence away from Dallas.
Right.
I loved how Lawrence told the Cowboys to their face, hey, you guys are never winning a Super Bowl. I'm out of here. Because there's no truer words have never been spoken. But they re-signed Jerron Reed. They drafted big Byron Murphy out of Texas a year ago, and when he played, he was really impressive.
Right.
I think Leonard Williams is probably one of the most underrated players in the league. So, and then you got Boye Mafe, who's also a kind of a blur coming off the edge. He's pretty fast. What do you think of the Hawks' kind of remade defensive front with Lawrence added?
I think they still need some more pressure off the edge. There's no doubt. Maybe even a linebacker to play alongside Ernest Jones, who actually was awesome for the Seahawks a year ago. You remember he was with the Rams his first few years in the NFL, and for some reason they traded him to the Titans. I don't know what that was all about, and then he ended up coming to Seattle, and he's been really, really good. I mean, he was almost like a renaissance, like a career rebirth in Seattle, and that earned him a big contract. Well, now he's got the big contract, right? So we'll see what kind of performance we get out of a guy after he gets the big deal. The good news for the defense is that you got guys like Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, that are all getting close to playing for new deals, so we should expect big seasons out of them. I still think, again, they need more on the interior. They need more off the edge. There's no doubt about that. The DeMarcus Lawrence signing is fine. I mean, I'm not doing backflips over it. There's a reason why the Cowboys didn't want him back. He played 4 games a year ago. He's banged up with a foot injury, had 3 sacks, but according to our guys in Seattle, guys like Hugh Millen that watch all the tape, by the way, who I trust immensely, most of those sacks were because of pressure coming from somewhere else, and he just happened to run into it. So I don't know what to expect out of DeMarcus Lawrence. The first thing is getting the guy to stay healthy for maybe 13, 14 games, I think would be nice. And then second of all, does he still have the speed off the edge to get after the quarterback? So I would not rely on him if I were John Schneider on draft day. If there's a defensive end that I really like in the draft on day 2 or day 3, I'm grabbing him, whether I have DeMarcus Lawrence or not. Same thing goes for the quarterback, Larry, as well, by the way. If there's a young quarterback I like in the draft, if they're in love with Jackson Dart, for example, or let's say Shador somehow, some way falls to 18, I'm taking him. I'm not going to let Sam Darnold preclude me from taking a star in the draft that I think can be a franchise quarterback because I have Sam Darnold on what accounts to a 1-year deal at the age of 27 years old, coming off 1 great year in the NFL. So that's the cool thing for me about this team. There's nothing that John Schneider has done in free agency or on the trade market that should tell them that they're good passing on somebody they really like on draft day.
It sounds like you're skeptical on Darnold a little bit, huh?
Well, I mean, why wouldn't you be? I mean, he's had 1 great year in the NFL, right?
Sure.
1.
In Minnesota with Jefferson and Addison.
Jamar Chase, Addison, Hawkinson, whatever, played inside. I mean, terrible the last couple games. Obviously, the offensive line fell apart. I think we saw that in Minnesota. Now, by the way, the ironic part about that is there's a chance that the Hawks may start looking at Garrett Bradbury, who just got released by Minnesota, who was with Darnold as his center with the Vikings to replace Big Olu. I think they may have been in San Francisco as well, by the way, if I'm not mistaken. So, Look, I mean, I just think in the end, there's nothing, again, that Sam Darnold has done that should make you say we're good for a decade or we're good for 5 years. Let him prove it, right? And the deal the Hawks gave him is a prove-it deal. He's got to perform to continue to earn a big payday here in Seattle. And if he doesn't, you get the hell out of the way. But I like it. I like the roll of the dice, Larry, to try to become elite at that position. If Sam Darnold can give the Seahawks what he gave Minnesota a year ago, for the next 4 or 5 years, then yeah, they're going to have an elite level franchise potential quarterback, maybe right outside the, Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen's Mahomes category. They'll be fine at that spot. But I don't know why Seahawks fans or any fan of any team would not be slightly skeptical after just 1 year of Sam Darnold looking like a really good player.
Yeah, no, especially since he did it in Minnesota, and then at the end of the year, he just looked really bad. At the end of the year, he looked horrible. Mel Kiper had his mock out today, and he has you guys at 18 or 19 taking Nick Emanwari, the big, super athletic safety from South Carolina, maybe the greatest athlete in this draft, saying that maybe Mike Macdonald is looking at Kyle Hamilton 2.0 when he sees Emanwari. What do you think? I mean, I think Julian Love has got to be one of the best players in the entire league. Every time I watch Julian Love, he's awesome. I mean, he is awesome. Kobe Bryant won the Thorpe Award in college at corner at Cincinnati years ago, but you have him at free safety. What is he the weak link? Is Kobe Bryant the weak link? Because
you are You are in love with these trophies these guys win in college, man.
Yes.
I mean, why not go sign Gino Torretta? He won the Heisman Trophy 30 years ago, for crying out loud, right? No, I mean, the stars of the secondary are Love and Witherspoon. I mean, those are the two big stars in that secondary. Maybe not stars on a national level, but as far as the machine that makes the Seahawks defense go, they're the stars. So taking Eamon Warrior at safety, I think makes sense. You got to have three safeties, obviously. And right now you got Julian Love, you got Kobe Bryant, you got Jarek Reed, who was a rookie 2 years ago out of New Mexico. He hasn't done much. So I think grabbing a guy like that to kind of be a part of that rotation would be a smart thing for the Seahawks. But again, if there's an interior offensive lineman, by the way, that you've got your eye on at number 18, the Hawks have to grab him. I mean, I like this Gray Zabel kid, by the way, from North Dakota State. He can play center. He can play guard. He's nasty. He's mean. He's tough. He comes from a absolute blue-collar background. Would love to have a guy like that here in Seattle. Tyler Booker out of Alabama is also another guy that the Hawks have had their eye on, I know, as well. So there's going to be chances. There's going to be a lot of opportunity with all the draft capital the Seahawks have, drafting at 18, moving back, because everybody wants to move back. I was talking to Lance Zierlein the other day. NFL Network, NFL.com does a weekly show with us, and he said he's only got first-round grades, I think, on 23 or 22 players this year in the first round. So there's going to be a lot of teams looking to move back. And with the draft capital the Seahawks have, they could really potentially load up on draft picks this year. So I just expect them, whatever they do on draft day, to get that interior of the offensive line addressed. Will they take the right guys? Hell, I don't know. Will they coach them up? Hell, I don't know. They haven't shown they can do that in 10 years, for God's sakes. Will they address it? They better damn well address it, because it's the biggest need on the football team by far. It's not even close.
If you pass John Schneider in the elevator or in the stadium, does he say,
"What's up, bro?
Hey, what's up, Dave? What's up, Softy?" Does he say, or does he give you the head bob, or does he just ignore you altogether? You're not on his level.
It just depends on how much of the radio show he's heard, by the way, lately. And if he's heard a lot of the radio show lately, he might not be too happy with me, to be honest with you. So, I mean, like, none of us are in this business to make friends. We're all in this business to do our job and tell the truth. And, Jerry DiPoto, for example, the Mariners, I'm not sure how much I can expect out of him as far as Christmas cards, coming up this December, to be honest with you. So, no, I mean, look, like I said, John has done overall a phenomenal job as the general manager of this football team. They're consistently in the playoff hunt. They've only had really one turd of a year since he's been here. Hell, they won 10 games, Larry, with a brand new head coach last year and lost the tiebreaker to the LA Rams, right? If you were to tell people you're going to fire Pete Carroll, you're going to hire a first-year head coach in Mike Macdonald, you're going to win 10 games in year number one, I think everybody would have taken that, right? But nobody knew that 10 games would be the first time ever in the 17-game format that a 10-win team did not make the postseason. So I think they're moving in the right direction, and I hate to be a broken record dude here, but all of this is dependent on the offensive line getting addressed and getting fixed. They do that, they got a division championship team on their hands, and maybe even more in what I think is a wide-open NFC.
You guys got to win against the Niners at Levi's in November. It was
automatic 2 wins, baby. You guys are throwing in the towel. You're throwing in the towel, man. You're cutting everybody. You're going to give Brock Purdy a gajillion-dollar deal. It's going to kill your cap for years to come. I'm just counting the 4 games against the Cardinals and Niners. Minimum 3 out of 4. Minimum 3-1.
Look at you. Hey, since we were talking draft, Oregon's Pro Day was this week, and it came out that the Niners sent 8 high-ranking officials to Eugene for the Pro Day. That's the most they've ever sent to any college Pro Day, at least in recent memory that I know of.
Right.
You're up there, and you're a big college football guy. So here are the names at the Oregon Pro Day: Jamari Caldwell, Derek Harmon, Jordan Birch, Tez Johnson, Jeffrey Bassa, Connerly, who's got crazy workout times, Jabbar Muhammad, the corner, Terrence Ferguson, the tight end, Jordan James, Dylan Gabriel, Johnny Cornelius, Dante Manning, and Trayshawn Holden. Who's your favorite Duck?
Well, I can tell you my least favorite of all of them. My least favorite is Jabbar Muhammad, for obvious reasons, because he transferred from Washington to go play for Oregon. Jabbar Muhammad was at Oklahoma State and then went to UW, was a part of the team that played Michigan for the national championship, was a good player, and then transferred to Oregon, went and chased the bag down there in Eugene, and then got his ass kicked by Ohio State in the Rose Bowl and had his dream season come to an end. So I'm kind of, a little schadenfreude, if you will, Jabbar Muhammad. Every time that guy, it's like what the hell
scorned.
Well, yeah. I mean, what's the movie? Back in the day, the Christmas movie back in the 1940s. Every time blah blah blah, an angel gets its wings. What the hell's come on, help me out here. What's the movie I'm quoting? What's the movie I'm quoting?
Yeah.
From back in the day, the famous one, whatever, the black and white one. You know what I'm talking about. Every time Jabbar Muhammad gets roasted by somebody, there's like a little bell in my head that goes off. Ding ding, Jabbar Muhammad got roasted. So not a big fan of his. Derek Harmon's interesting because he came to Seattle with Michigan State a couple years ago and got destroyed by Washington. And then we went out there 2 years ago and they destroyed the Spartans in their own stadium. I wasn't that impressed by him the 2 times I saw him play for Michigan State. He obviously had a little bit of a renaissance at Oregon because he had better talent around him, man. There's no question about that. But he would be intriguing. Josh Connerly, the tackle, was a big star at Rainier Beach High School up here in Seattle. Was a 5-star guy that took a good NIL deal to go to Oregon and turned down Washington when Jimmy Lake was the head coach. He's a franchise potential left tackle, in my opinion. Tez Johnson, possession receiver, not a big body guy, 5'10",
possession receiver. Well, he's 5'7", 155.
He's listed at 5'10". I don't know who's got him at 5'7", right? Unless you're looking at maybe his Willy Wonka tape, right?
But 155 pounds. Yeah. I mean, that's Larry Krueger in the 5th grade.
He is very, very small. There's no question about that. And then Terrence Ferguson, the tight end, I actually like a lot. We like to bust his balls because if you go back and watch the Week 6 game against the Huskies in 2023, Dan Lanning had this thing where he would tell players to fake injuries at Oregon. Chris Hudson did it in 2022 against the Huskies to stop the clock. And then he had Terrence Ferguson do it in 2023. He goes down. Oregon's going down the field to kick what was supposed to be for them the game-tying field goal, which they eventually missed, and the Huskies won the game, by the way. Terrence Ferguson goes down with what looks like a left knee injury and then switches to his right knee. And then Herb Street is on TV going, which knee is it? You just grab both of them. Which one's hurting you, pal? So if he ends up in Seattle or San Francisco, we're going to bust his chops for sure about that situation in Oregon. But I would say my 2 favorite Ducks, if I had to have some favorite Ducks at the next level, would probably be Josh Connerly and probably Tez Johnson. Jordan James, running back, can play, but man, he was behind a great line when he was with the Ducks for sure.
What did you think of you mentioned Harmon on that D-line, but what about Jordan Birch and Jamari Caldwell? Caldwell's like 340, and he looked pretty good at the Senior Bowl. Birch is like 290, and I know he was a high recruit, and it's kind of disappointing. Yeah, but he had a good year.
Yeah, Birch is a guy that grew up in SEC country, I think, from South Carolina. He's a 5-star guy. So you think about a South Carolina high school football player who's a 5-star recruit out of high school, and the way they play high school football down there, like that just automatically jumps off the page as a badass. I mean, he was very good for Oregon. I think between the 2 of them, if I'm talking about Bossa or Birch, the value probably for me is greater with Bossa at linebacker than it is at Birch at defensive end. He's a later round guy, Bossa versus Jordan Birch, obviously. So if I had to look for some value, I'd probably go with Bossa over Birch, to be honest with you.
There's no Huskies this year in the draft?
Carson Bruner is really the only guy.
Oh, yes. What do you think of Carson Bruner?
He
Mark
ran Bruner's 4.5s. You remember Mark Bruner back in the day, former Steeler tight end? He was a freshman at Washington when they won the national title. That's his boy. He's good. He's very good. He is a blue-collar, hard hat kind of guy, man. He's not going to wow you with any real physical, athletic ability, but he went and blew the combine away. I don't know what happened with him. Maybe he had a rocket up his ass or something at the combine because he just killed the 40 at linebacker. That kind of surprised everybody, but he's a reliable dude. He's a future team captain, kind of team leader kind of guy on defense at linebacker, reliable as hell, was always in the right spot at the right time, played through pain. He was banged up tremendously when he was at Washington and never really remember calling his name for the wrong reasons when he was at Washington, missing a tackle, being in the wrong gap, things like that. So he's definitely probably a late day 2, if not day 3 kind of guy at linebacker. But if you want a consistent 8 or 9 year pro at linebacker, Carson Bruner's your guy for sure.
2 last thoughts before we get out of here. Pete Carroll jumped to the Raiders. Right. And he brought in Chip Kelly from Ohio State, the former Oregon head coach, former Niner head coach. Patrick Graham's the defensive coordinator, also with Pac-12 ties. And then he traded for Geno and signed Raheem Mostert. So what do you think? What is Pete going to bring to the Raiders?
Yeah.
What's Geno going to bring to the Raiders? How do you see that? What kind of year do you see them having?
Well, first of all, we know what Pete Carroll is going to bring to the Raiders, and that's massive energy, right?
Right.
He's 70.
Great. They need it.
Yeah, 73, 74 years old, whatever he is now, but he is going to bring an unbelievable amount of energy. He's going to bring a complete culture change, right, to that franchise who absolutely needs it, and he's going to win, right? He's going to win, man. I mean, he's going to build that defense first before he builds the offense. There's no question about that. The Geno Smith thing to me is interesting because he doesn't have a deal yet, Larry, for 2026. I mean, he's playing on a one-year contract as of right now, and a new deal has not been done yet with him. So I'm curious why that's taken so long, number one. But with Geno, you'll get what you had in Seattle. You got a guy who is pretty steady, will make a wow play every now and then, but then every now and then will make you want to rip your hair out and punch the guy with a stupid mistake inside the red zone that turns into an interception touchdown for the opposing team. I mean, that's the biggest difference in a lot of ways between Sam Darnold and Geno Smith were the red zone numbers from a year ago. So they definitely upgraded from what they had. I mean, they had nothing. They had Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, for God's sakes, and now they have Geno Smith. So they've absolutely upgraded at quarterback. Have they upgraded to a point where Geno Smith is going to be the next Super Bowl winning quarterback for the Raiders? No, probably not. He's in his mid-30s, for God's sakes. But is he a nice stopgap between now and the next guy? Totally. And by the way, don't be surprised if the Raiders take Ashton Genty at number 6. I think Pete Carroll is drooling over himself to get that guy at number 6, because you remember what he did in Seattle when he showed up here in 2010. He built the entire team around the quarterback and then went and got Russell Wilson in 2012. He built the LOB, and then he built Marshawn and Michael Robinson and the league's highest paid offensive line with guys like Russell Okung and Max Unger. And then he went and got Russell in 2012. So I think he'll do the same thing in Vegas.
Last one, Dave, and we appreciate you having you on.
Yeah. By the way, the movie is It's a Wonderful Life is the movie that we were thinking about.
It's a wonderful
life.
The
fact that neither one of us could remember that is freaking embarrassing, by the way.
I know, seriously. I don't watch that stuff. I mean, I've seen that movie 3 or 4 times, but I haven't watched it in 20 years.
You don't watch holiday movies, Christmas movies? Don't you have a heart, for God's sakes, Larry?
Jeez, not really. You know who I had on the show though, who's a regular on the Hallmark Channel, is Michael Thompson. Michael Thompson, Clay Thompson's dad, loves the Hallmark Channel.
That's crazy.
And it's not even BS. It's legit.
I'm an emotional guy. We can talk the Waltons. We can talk Little House on the Prairie. We can do all that stuff, man.
Good night, John Boy.
Lassie, absolutely, dude.
I miss those shows. All right, last one. You guys won a Super Bowl with Russell on the rookie deal. And then you had to pay him, and it didn't work out. And I had you on a couple of years ago, and I was telling you about how people were complaining about Purdy and the Niners. And you had a great soundbite that we used, which was, hey, enjoy him on the rookie deal, because when the rookie deal's up, then you're going to have to pay everybody, and
totally.
It's far more difficult.
Right.
What did you learn, I guess, watching Seattle go through their whole lineage from winning, Super Bowl with Russell as a rookie on the rookie deal to how things changed after you paid him? And is there anything that the 49ers are the Niners in your mind? I know, put aside are they cooked?
It's
are
over.
They cooked for the foreseeable future, or do you think they can reshuffle and get off the canvas?
Nope, it's all over. It's done. You're finished. If I were you, I would just move to Buffalo or something and start covering the Bills, or move to Kansas City if I were you, Larry, and start covering the Chiefs or whatever. Hell, the Cowboys got a better chance of winning a title than you guys do down there in Santa Clara. No, I'm just half kidding, by the way. I mean, the one thing that I really noticed when the Seahawks had to start paying Russell, and the thing about it, to be fair to him, is that coincided at the same time as Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, Cam Chancellor, Doug Baldwin, Russell. I mean, we can keep going, right? Marshawn, all these guys wanted new deals. I remember walking around the locker room, Larry, in 2013, 2014, just looking around thinking, God, look at all this talent that they've got in the locker room. This must have been what it was like for you guys, like back in the 80s, right? With the, Rice and Montana and all the, great players walking around there, Ronnie Lott. And they had to pay them all. They had to pay everybody. And where it really hit them was in the depth. Because if you remember that 2013 Seahawks defensive line, They didn't have a lot of stars on the defensive line, but man, they were like 8-9 deep, Larry. It was unbelievable. They were coming off the bench like stormtroopers and waves, just fresh for every single play. Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill were freaking backups on that team, dude, in 2013. They were so damn deep on that defensive line, and that was a big reason why the LOB was as good as they were. A lot of people like to talk about the secondary, and they got the accolades, man, but that defensive line up front, getting after people, stopping the run, they were unbelievably deep. And then once everybody started getting paid, they lost the depth. Right? I mean, that really is where you have a problem when you start losing depth. I mean, Ken Hamlin, remember the name Ken Hamlin, was a starting safety for the Seahawks in 2005. Middle of the year, right? Middle of the year, he goes down to Pioneer Square in downtown Seattle, gets into a fight and gets hit over the head with a stop sign and ends up having to miss the rest of the year. Okay. Marquand Manuel fills in for him, and then he gets hurt. And then Edric Pruitt has to play in the Super Bowl, and they're giving up these big runs to Jerome Bettis and Anquan Randall Els running all over the place because they just didn't have the depth. So the depth is where it's really going to kill you, man. What I would ask Brock Purdy is this. Do you want to win a championship, or do you want to make the most money possible? Because this is a guy who was making $1 million a year. Can you settle for 35 mil? Can you settle for 40 mil? Can you settle for 35 times what you were making before and give your family generational wealth? Maybe buy an extra cow for the farm back in Iowa. Can you settle for 35 times what you were making before? Or do you really need 50 times what you were making before? Because if you settle for 35, the extra $15 million could get you a couple linemen, by the way, in free agency, or maybe a wide receiver in free agency. So this just comes down to whatever his values are, man. What does he want? Does he want to break the bank and make as much money as he can? Which, you know what? If he wants to do it, no judgy. Hey, everybody's got a right? If that's your goal in life, go for it. Fine, phenomenal, awesome. But if you want to win a title, I would absolutely consider pulling a Tom Brady if I were him and take a little less cash to make it happen.
Dave Softy Mahler, the king of KJR. Dave, awesome stuff, man. Thanks for giving us, indulging us with a little walk behind enemy lines. We'll do it again soon, man.
All right,
good to talk to you.
Checks in the mail, right, pal?
There you go.
All right, bud.
Don't let it bounce.
See you, man.
All right, more straight ahead. It's Niners Nightly, and we'll have more straight ahead for you on the Sports Leader.